Sometimes a single event doesn't just make a headline. It completely rewrites the story for the entire world. So today, we're going to break down how one military strike sent these incredible shockwaves from the Middle East right to your local gas station and even into the voting booth.
So, let's set the scene. February 28, 2026. This is the day everything changes. A military operation hits Iran, and it's like the first domino in a massive chain reaction. It wasn't just about the immediate targets. This one event, well, it rattled the entire global system.
Okay, so to really get the scale of what happened next, we've got to jump in our time machine for a second and go back. What was the world actually like right before all this went down?
You see, just a few months earlier, the big conversation was all about one thing, and it was the economy. I mean, a huge majority of American voters were laser-focused on lowering prices. That's it. But then, boom, Operation Epic Fury kicks off, Iran hits back, and just like that, literally overnight, the world's attention snaps to something entirely new.
And that sudden shift, it had an immediate and frankly brutal impact. It was like a body blow to a global economy that was already kind of shaky to begin with.
All right, let's set a baseline here. Before all this, oil prices were pretty boring, actually. They were just sitting there, stable, right around $70 a barrel. Totally predictable. But then, in just a matter of days, that price didn't just climb, it exploded. We're talking a jump of over 50%. And this wasn't just the market getting nervous. Oh no. This was a direct consequence of the conflict throwing a giant wrench into the world's energy supply.
So you might be asking, why such a huge jump so fast? Well, this right here is the reason. It all comes down to the Strait of Hormuz. Think of it as a tiny bottleneck, and Iran has its hand on the valve. About a fifth of the entire world's oil has to pass through that one spot. So when Iran threatened to close it, they were basically threatening to cut off the world's energy supply.
And that huge global problem, it became a very personal problem very quickly. You saw it right at the pump. Gas prices, which were already on everyone's mind, just blew past $4 a gallon. We hadn't seen numbers like that in years. Suddenly, this faraway conflict wasn't so far away anymore. It was hitting everybody's wallet hard.
And trust me, it wasn't just about oil. The ripple effect was massive. Stock markets from New York to Tokyo took a nosedive. Thousands of flights were grounded, basically paralyzing travel in the region. And it even messed with the supply of things like sulfur and helium, stuff you don't think about, but that are crucial for manufacturing all over the world.
And the folks over at Morgan Stanley really hit the nail on the head. They said, look, markets can handle a quick shock. But the real problem, the thing that was making investors really nervous, was the uncertainty. The big question became, how long is this going to last? And that was the billion-dollar question, wasn't it?
But, the economy is really only half the story here. To get why this situation became so explosive, you have to flip the script and see it from the other side. From Iran's point of view, this wasn't just some targeted strike. This was an act of war.
And right away, you had these two completely different stories being told to the world. On one side, the U.S. is calling it Operation Epic Fury, framing it as a necessary targeted action. But on the other side, Iran is calling it an illegal act of aggression and framing their response as nothing less than a war of survival.
And from Tehran's perspective, their logic was pretty straightforward. They argued that everything they did next, like closing that strait, wasn't them being the aggressor. No, they were framing it purely as self-defense, as their inherent right to protect their country. So while all this is heating up on the world stage, let's bring it back home. Because back in the U.S., the conflict, and especially its economic fallout, was basically tearing the country in two. So, if you just look at the surface, you see that a clear majority of Americans, 53%, were against the military action. But that one number, it doesn't even begin to tell the whole story. The real story is what's hiding just beneath it.
I mean, look at this. The partisan divide is just staggering. It's almost a perfect mirror image. You have 84% of Republicans supporting the action and 86% of Democrats opposing it. We're not talking about a simple disagreement here. This is a country that is completely and totally polarized on the issue.
Which all brings us to a really fundamental question, right? At the end of the day, did any of this make Americans actually feel safer? Did the strikes accomplish their main goal?
Well, the answer from the public was a pretty loud no. In fact, way more people, almost half the country, felt the action made the U.S. less safe. Only about a third of people felt safer because of it. And here's where it all comes full circle.
Remember what we said was the #1 issue for voters before all this started? The economy. Well, as those gas prices shot up, disapproval of the president's handling of the economy also shot up to a record high of 58%.
So now you've got all these different threats: the war, the shaky economy, this divided public opinion, and they're all weaving together and heading straight for one thing: the 2026 midterm elections.
This is really what makes the whole political situation so incredibly volatile. See, the conflict didn't just add a new problem for voters to think about. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire. It took the one issue people already cared about most, the cost of living, and just supercharged it.
And this is where a huge national issue can have a very, very local impact. I mean, just look at some of these congressional districts. We're talking about races that were won by less than a percentage point, literally a handful of votes. In contests that are that tight, something like the price of gas isn't just a talking point. It can be the single thing that decides the election and tips the entire balance of power in Congress.
So that leaves us with one last massive question. When people walk into that voting booth, what's going to be on their minds? Is it the complicated details of foreign policy? Is it a referendum on the president? Or is it just going to come down to the price they just paid to fill up their car? The answer to that question, well, it's not just going to decide an election. It's going to tell us a whole lot about what really matters to people when a crisis hits.